another RTX 3070 review. Yes, welcome to another RTX 3070 review and our first video of 2021. I hope that you guys were able to enjoy your end of the year celebrations, even with COVID stuff going on. Yet now, let's talk about the EVGA card that we have here today. We have the 3070 Ultra XC3, and unlike the last review, we also have a switch from an AMD CPU to an Intel one. We are running 16 gigabytes of RAM and a Core i5-9400F, which should give a good chunk more gaming performance over the Ryzen 1600 we used in the last review, due to the higher clock speeds and such of the Intel processor. So let's talk about this card. Unlike the BHATech from last time, we're running an even higher overclock with a boost clock of 1770 MHz compared to the 1755 of the BHATech card. This card also features 3-fan design, which makes it a bigger dimension card, coming in at 285 millimeters versus BHATech's 232. Yet with an extra fan, we do get a good chunk more cooling performance. As we can see here on this graph, the EVGA card is 10 degrees cooler than the BHATech, which is a massive improvement, especially if you want to overclock. The EVGA card could also experience longer life because of the lower temps, yet your mileage may vary on that. Now, due to the larger size of this card, it may not fit in ultra compact builds, and that's where the BHATech has a strong suit. And I can recommend that card if you're trying to work with a very limited amount of space and keep your build small. Yet, moving on to performance now, I tried my best this time to get a wide variety of games, as some people requested. We start with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is quite a difficult game to run on some hardware, yet the 3070 handles it with relative ease, getting a solid average of 80 FPS max on max settings, with lows of 63 in densely populated areas, which is extremely smooth for a story game such as this, and it looks amazing. Next up, we have, for some people, the biggest letdown of 2021, CyberPunk 2077, which I decided that I should only benchmark with RTX on at ultra settings, 1080p, DLSS set to quality, and much like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the 3070 handles this game with surprising ease, with 72 FPS average and a minimum of 66, which is hardly noticeable dips in a game like this. Another title that is quite intensive, we have Metro Exodus on Ultra, and it got 88 FPS average and 60 FPS lows. It seems this card so far refuses to go below 60 FPS, which is very nice. This setup is crushing every game I've thrown at it so far, and it's going to continue doing that as we get further down the benchmark game stack. The next game up here is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. My favorite game because I have literally spent 2 hours in game but have never left the benchmark screen. It's amazing. What we're looking at here first off is RTX off, which with this setup makes little sense because when we flip it on, we're still getting really solid averages of 70 FPS. Yet finally, the RTX falls and we slip below the 60 FPS minimum, and we've gotten our first and only dip to it, or below it, from 50 to 50 FPS. Now, we come to one of the most popular FPS games, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which at this point could literally run on a well-optimized toaster. We get 310 FPS maxed out average, which is buttery smooth all day long. Next up, Project Cars 2, which just absolutely just gets demolished. 200 FPS average, over 200 FPS average, 160 FPS lows, which is literally meaningless. And continuing with the racing games, we have Dirt Rally 2.0 maxed out with a nice average of 107 FPS and 60 FPS minimums all day long here. This card is so consistent game over game. Whatever you throw at it, it's nice and buttery smooth. It's also pretty quiet and cool. Now, to finally wrap up the benchmarks, we have Quake RTX coming in with pure butter of 133 average FPS and 102 FPS lows, And finally, a game that's aging but is still quite popular, GTA 5, maxed out, getting 120 FPS and 70 FPS lows, nice and smooth. Now in terms of productivity, this card is just like the Zotac 3070. It ripped through the BMW Blender render in about 18 seconds with NVIDIA optics and 36 seconds in CUDA, which is blistering fast. But the small overclock means that the performance gains in these tasks is negligible or non-existent. Yet, what do I personally think of this card? Well, compared to the Zotac that was in the last video, this EVGA Ultra XC3 card is the way to go if you're building in a case that has the space. You don't have to worry about potentially undervolting these cards to get optimized cooling performance like the Zotac. Also, in terms of power draw, it's just like last time. I still recommend having a good 650 watt or a decent 750 watt, as these cards can really suck back power, and if they spike up, they can trip your power supply's over voltage protection and turn your computer off, ruining your gaming experience. So in conclusion, as the stock issues are still big, as we're still early into the new year, you may not have a choice on what card you get. You will be buying what is in stock. Yet do not worry if you happen to stumble into this card in stock on Newegg or Amazon. It will greet you with open arms and lift you off to FPS heaven. EVGA is one of the most quality GPU card makers there is. Their warranty support is great, the performance is great, and they even have a trade-in program that allows you to send back the card and upgrade to a 3080 or 3090, just allowing you to pay the difference. So don't hesitate on this card if you see it. Anyways, I'm BHATech Hunter. Have a good day.